a lot of people sort of think we're just a Christmas charity. They don't realise we carry on all year round. And I go, no, I'm not just for Christmas.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast Chatzzz. And we've got a very, very special guest today, and I am so sorry for being so late. Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
No problem.
So,
We got there in the end.
I know, I honestly feel so bad. I've said it already. But
Don't worry about it.
I overestimated myself. I thought I could do 3 podcasts in one day, but I'm never doing that again.
Yeah, I'm not very good with being very early myself. So it's just when
You'll be right 5 minutes before.
Exactly.
So I think we connected, didn't we?
Was it a few weeks ago?
Yeah.
Andalusia?
Yeah. The ladies at lunch. I'm obviously not a lady, but how did you find that? What did you think of the talk? Can you remember it or not?
Yeah, I do remember it, and I thought it was really good. I didn't know what to expect because it was my first one that I'd been to. I had been invited to them before, but I hadn't ever been. And Tracy'd been in touch and said, "Do you fancy coming?" and whatever. And I said, "Well, I couldn't go on the first one." So she said, "Well, we'll let you know when the next one is." I said, "Oh yeah, please do." Anyway, she did. And I went, and it was lovely because I actually saw quite a few people I already knew, but also I met a few new people as well. No, it was good. And the meal was lovely. Lovely food. Yeah. And it was nice to catch up with, obviously, some of the ladies that I already knew, but also sort of get to know new people, which is lovely in my position because it's just getting that word out of knowing who I am and what I'm doing and getting up to speed with people. So, no, it was good. Yeah, it was good.
No, I thought it was good as well, to be fair. So I'll get you to introduce yourself to the viewers and the listeners if you're meeting someone for the first time. So how would you introduce yourself?
Hello.
I think most people would say that. To be fair, when I say this question, I'm like, you definitely wouldn't introduce yourself like this, would you? But you would just say hello.
Hi, I'd like to introduce myself, and my name is Sara Oldham. I look after Cash for Kids, and I am the charity exec of the charity, and it's just fantastic. Yeah,
Reward.
It's extremely rewarding. Sad. I probably cry about twice a week, if not more. Yeah. Certain stories come in that sort of, A, you don't believe, or C, you think, what? And you go through all the different emotions. But yeah, it's fantastic. And as I say, I bang on the drum every single day, and every single morning I wake up thinking I'm going to help one child or 500 children or 1,000 children or whatever. So every day brings a new day. Yeah. Good.
That's cool. And the 3 facts about yourself. So,
right.
We talked about this before, didn't we?
Well, I was thinking about this. I was thinking, is this going to be facts for earlier on in life or facts for now or whatever? And I was thinking, I thought I'll start with this one. Was when I was a little girl, I lived near a very large vicarage, which I used to live in as a child. But at that time, I wasn't living there. And we were really good friends with the family. And they used to let the vicarage out to stars and pop groups and singers and stuff because it was a fantastic place for doing recordings, writing, right in the middle of the countryside in Herefordshire. And so I used to spend quite a lot of my time in a garden playing with the owner's child, she was called Tiffany. And we used to run and play with the Queen. The band Queen.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, that's mad. Yeah.
And we used to also, there was Van de Graaff generator that used to come, but really it was sort of the Queen really that we spent an awful lot of time with, which now when I think about it, it's completely surreal.
I was going to say, at the time it was
because
just like the norm.
It was just the norm. It was absolutely the norm. And we used to eat together and used to play games in the garden, and they used to run around the garden. They were crazy because it was in the day when men didn't really wear makeup or nail varnish and crazy things in their hair. And that's what it was like. And I I didn't see anything abnormal about that. And it was fantastic. But looking back, I should have got loads and loads of signatures. Yes, I lost out on that one. But yeah, it was very, very interesting.
I was going to say, yeah.
That's probably one of my facts.
Yes, very interesting.
So that's an interesting one. Another fact of mine is I used to play hockey and run for the county.
Oh, very cool.
So in my fit days,
Back when
I don't think you'll to get me up a hill anymore. Because I'm certainly not into running or anything like that. But I was a short distance. I wasn't a long distance runner. I never really enjoyed long distance running, but I was a short distance. So I played hockey, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was those days where I was in a situation where I could get away from everything, and it was really, really lovely. I enjoyed it.
What position did you play?
I was right half in hockey.
Okay, yeah.
So it was right in the middle of it all. And so I wasn't sort of out of the game. I was probably in the game more than I should have been. And also when I was running, I did 100 meters and relay.
So fast then, yeah.
They were fast, yeah. Yeah, it was good.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Because sports when you're younger are just so good.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Like the camaraderie as well.
Yeah,
and stuff
it
like
was
that.
good. I met a lot of lovely people. I travelled all over the place in a rickety rockety van. There used to be this chap that used to take us here and there and everywhere. How we got to where we were supposed to get, I do not know. Because the van was like a real rickety rockety van. But we had so much fun and it was so good. And it was just a way of my life at that time.
Yeah. And I never did apart from football, but especially like the athletics, I don't know. I used to think I could do like the 200 meters. I wasn't quite fast enough for the 100, but the 200 I was okay.
Yeah.
But then when you go in like the city, never mind like different counties, you think, bloody hell, I'm slow.
Wow. Yeah. Especially when you go to Birmingham and you go into all the cities, you suddenly think, I'm not quite as... It was funny, because I used to run faster when I did the relay than I did my normal 100 meters. I used to smash my targets. And I don't know whether it's because I was holding on to something or I felt as if I couldn't let the rest of the team down.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I always run much faster when I did the relay.
Cool.
That was funny.
And the third one.
Oh, now this, it's really, really difficult. And I kept sort of going back to my past. And I think when I was at school, I wasn't particularly happy at school. I didn't really enjoy school that much, but I had some really great teachers who sort of showed me the way a little bit, because for a while it was my personal life was not very happy. So I think they all sort of looked after me somehow, which was really lovely. And I ended up becoming a prefect.
Oh, really?
That's right.
I remember prefects, yeah. Honestly, I haven't heard that word in years since I've been in school.
I remember being in the assembly and they suddenly said my name. And I thought, but I think it was because the way I was, I think they thought maybe I would calm down and show
people the way.
Show people the way. So I think I went back to my childhood for whatever reason, because I don't know whether I've got any facts now, really.
I'm sure we'll talk about plenty.
I'm very open.
I'm sure we'll talk about plenty the next time. So. Yeah. So what were you like growing up then? You talked about being a prefect, but before that, any like first memories and stuff?
Yeah. Well, I remember when I was little, when I was very small, I always felt very happy. I had a very happy home life, happy cousins. I had lots of cousins that I played with, and they were all on my doorstep. We had friends, but we tend to have, because there were so many of us, we always had like cousin friendships. And I'm still friends with my cousins today. I'm very, very, I love my cousins.
How many have you got then?
Oh, lots. Because
I've got none, you see.
Have you not?
Yeah. It's interesting to see, like my dad's just got one sister.
Right.
Doesn't have any kids, just cats. And my mum doesn't have any siblings.
Wow. Yeah. Well, you see, my dad had 3 older sisters and 1 younger sister.
So
they've all had sort of like 4 and 5 children. So there were so many grandchildren. And my granny remembered every one of us and when our birthdays was and everything. She was amazing. She was inspirational in my life, I have to say. She was a great person.
Sure.
And I hope that I think she has inspired me to be the person I am today.
Yeah.
But I had a very lovely life. And then all of a sudden it all went wrong when I was about 10.
Yeah.
My mum and dad split up, which was the most heartbreaking thing that I've ever been through. It was horrendous. And I suddenly realised that I was actually quite a very lucky girl prior to that, because leading on from sort of like the age of 10 till I was sort of 15, I suppose I was extremely unhappy. So that's why I threw myself into athletics, hockey, and lots of friendships. And I really had a lot of lovely friendships. Yeah. So I was able to go and stay there for weekends, which was lovely. So I was either at Caroline's house or Jackie's house, and their mums and dads kind of took me under their wing.
Oh,
so I had lots of surrogate mums and lots of great friends. But because of that, I think that's why I do the job that I do now. And I was thinking about that, I was thinking the reasons you do things. And I think that point in time was because it was so difficult in so many ways. I realized what it felt like to be hungry and what it felt like to be maybe disadvantaged a little bit, and I used to have to queue up in the preschool meal section and I used to hate it, absolutely hated it. So I got to the point where I didn't go anymore. I just used to, go and buy a biscuit or something and just have that because it was so embarrassing. I just felt so embarrassed about it. So when I work with my job now, I kind of think back to my younger self, and I'm thinking how I felt at that time. So that's given me, I suppose, a better feeling of what I do, and I have a lot of empathy for these children. And because I'm quite, I'm quite atmospheric, and when I'm around people, I can kind of feel how they're feeling. So doing what I do is lovely, but can be quite upsetting as well.
I'd imagine, an emotional rollercoaster on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. But, like I spent time with my mum, I spent time with my dad, I spent time with my granny, I spent time with cousins, I spent time with lots of friends. So I had a real,
support network.
It's a real great support network. Yeah, definitely.
I think it's important, isn't it? Especially like at 10 years old, you understand what's going on, isn't it? It's not like you were young, you didn't really know what's going on.
That's right.
And they're like critical years, aren't they? Where you kind of develop into.
Yeah. And I think you lose your way a little bit. You do lose your way because you think, well, who am I anymore? Who do I belong to? And who do I, and so that's why I think I latched on to all these things like athletics, like hockey, like going to see friends and going out and having a great time. And because I thought, if I don't do it myself, I am quite a positive person. And my duvet always said, start each day with a smile with Snoopy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So there was lots of things. I was always very positive, always positive. And if anything came my way, I grabbed it. I grabbed every opportunity I could. So I was, I have been extremely lucky because I've done lots of lovely things only because I've thrown myself at it.
Yeah. I think that's been like people say, you're lucky or I'm lucky. Yes, to a sense, but I feel like you need to still put yourself in that position and then take the opportunity as well to gain that little bit of luck.
I think I suppose I saw myself in lots of places, which I probably thought, my God, how have I actually ended up here or whatever? And then I've grabbed the opportunity and I've sort of looked back and think, oh, that's amazing. But I could have very easily have thought, no, I don't want to do that, thank you, or no, thank you. But I'm always a yes, please, because you just don't know as you enter a door, it could be good, bad or ugly, but do you know what? You gain out of it. Yeah.
It's always like one of the questions I always ask people on this podcast is our biggest mistake, our biggest regret. And I've kind of shy away from it a bit more now is because, and I agree with it, it's not a good answer for the podcast, but say I don't have any regrets or I haven't made any mistakes or like lessons, which is so true, isn't it?
Yeah.
At least if you try it, you don't like it or it doesn't work out, you say, oh, I won't do that again.
Exactly.
And then you go in a different direction and you move forward, don't you?
I think everybody makes mistakes and we always look at things, well, I shouldn't have perhaps done it that way or whatever. Actually, you learn from it and mistakes can actually become opportunities. And that's what I've always thought, like I sort of sometimes describe myself as a weeble because I'm quite happy to be, thrown here and thrown there. But at the same time, I will get back up again. And I go, right, that was then, this is now, let's get on with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a good way to put it, I think. So then you said between 10 and 15, that's when you really took the athletics and the hockey and stuff. Then what did you want to do? Did you have an idea of what you wanted to do as a job or a career? Because I know we were saying about it before. It's hard to ask at 16 or 18 what you want to do with your life, but was there anything that you thought, oh, I'd like to be one of them?
Well, I think when I was about 14, 15, I thought, well, I'm going to be a policewoman. That is what I'm going to be. I am going to be a policewoman. And I remember the careers advisors, these career people used to come into the school and they'd say, right, that door, there wasn't many career people that did used to come in, but they tended to be sort of quite, standard sort of situations. And I remember walking through the door and I thought, well, yeah, I'm going to be a policewoman. So I'll just go and see the police. And I remember opening the door and walking in and he took one look at me and he said, I don't think so. And I said, but I want to be a policewoman. And he said, no, you can't. He said, you're not tall enough. She was 5'4". And I don't know, I think you have to be 5'8" or something.
Really?
You had to be quite tall. And I was thinking, oh no. And I can remember walking back through the door thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do now? Then I thought I might go into the RAF because where I lived at the time, there was an RAF camp. And I used to just sort of look at them thinking, well, I think I could do that. And I thought, well, it means that I can get away from my home life and go and be in the RAF and create my own family in the RAF. So that's what I thought. And that didn't happen. And then
Were you too short for that as well? Or?
Well, I don't know. I don't think I ever applied in the end. I don't think I ever applied. I don't know what on earth I was going to do in the RAF at all. I just don't. I didn't even like the uniform or anything. So I don't know what else. Anyway, I didn't do that.
That's funny.
So no, I don't think I did. I remember when I was a very little girl, I used to play shops and thinking I would always have a shop. Okay, but I've never had a shop. I had a shop. I had a lovely cash register.
Yeah.
So I used to.
It's the same thing anyway.
But I didn't do that. So yeah, and because I've got the gift of the gab, because when I was at school, I was always in trouble, as you can imagine, for talking. So I used to always get moved to the front of the class. But luckily, I had really great teachers who they weren't awful with me. They should just say, "Oh, sit at the front because you're going to distract everybody." And,
you weren't like naughty. You were just
wasn't
talkative.
naughty. I was talkative and
distracting the other kids.
Yeah. So yeah, I was a bit of a talkative girl, and I do remember one teacher saying to me, "Well, I don't know what you're going to do in life, but I hope it's to do with talking." And
that was it.
True.
Yeah,
I talk. So yeah.
Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting how much influence like teachers have on your life, isn't it? Like you remember that for your life and thinking, oh yeah, that makes sense or whatever. And other people have said that like their teachers have navigated them in a different way. Another podcast I did a couple of episodes ago, she was saying that she wanted to be an art teacher. And her art teacher said, no, you don't want to do that. You should do fashion. And then she ended up doing something different and she didn't end up being an art teacher. And you just think, if she didn't say that one thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine what would have happened.
But when I used to be told off for talking, it didn't upset me because, I used to think, well, I like talking and I am, I love communication and I think communication is so important. And I think there's sometimes a bit of lack of it where people don't understand what's going on. So, yeah.
I think communication is probably one of the most important skills to have, isn't it? And it is a skill because if you don't communicate with whoever you talk to, they don't understand or appreciate what's going on, then that can end badly. Like say for me, one of my marketing clients the other day, we had a conversation and there was some kind of miscommunication somewhere and we were both on like just thinking different things. And that's when there's like some kind of disagreement or conflict per se or just... And that's one thing that you don't know who's miscommunicated, but if you communicate properly, then you shouldn't really have that issue. But then if you want to resolve it, like we said, we'd chat about it and resolve it.
Exactly.
And that's important how you handle that. And I don't know what you think, but I think obviously more and more with phones and stuff, less people are learning how to converse in person, more just so over a message. And I think that's where like all the hate and all the stuff just happens really because say with the podcast example, I could quite easily do it over Zoom, but you don't really get a feel of someone.
No.
You can't really build that relationship. That's just my opinion. Obviously people do it successfully.
Yeah.
I much prefer to meet in person.
Yeah. Because I think you can see the eyes, you can see whether someone's comfortable, you can see, and
someone's sweated.
When I go, well,
I'm all right
you
now.
have been racing about. And I think, it's important. I love going out to see customers because I think when you do go out to see somebody, they get to know you as like your personality, the way you are. If you're a warm person or if whatever it is, you can actually portray that. Whereas I think over a Zoom or a Teams, I think people sometimes switch off.
Yeah, it's quite easy to do that. I think 100%. But yeah, it's a funny one. But like you say, I imagine you probably reflect a bit now and think, oh, it's chatty, but that's my job now. So it makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah. Yeah. I've always been chatty. And I love being chatty. I don't make any excuses for it because I think it gives me that confidence to be able to chat to people. When I first went into sales, it was like, well, you're going to be okay on cold calls. Oh, yes. I used to absolutely thrive on it, really. I used to love going on cold calls. I love meeting new people and seeing them and getting to know them. And you get to the point where some of your customers become actually your friend. They become quite good friends.
That's cool. So then what was the plan for after school then? What were you thinking? What were you wanting? What was the next step?
I was stuck, I think. I was stuck because I don't think I had really support at home knowing what I was going to be or what I wanted to do because I was sort of spending time with different people. I think I kind of lost my way a little bit. And in the last year in my school, because I was in the higher classes at school, some of the lower classes had a situation where they would have an opportunity to go on sort of like work experiences. And so I think there was somebody who was going and they didn't go. And then I got pulled out of a hat to have a work experience.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, well, we'll do it, And I spent some time in a hospital and I spent some time in a department, like quite a big department store. And I spent a week with a hairdresser's, like a local hair salon. And I got offered a job in all of the three, which was
pretty
amazing.
That's a compliment,
it was a compliment and it was lovely. But I didn't really like the departmental store. It didn't float my boat at all.
No, you wanted your own shop.
Even though it was my own shop, exactly. It just didn't hit off. I felt a bit bored. Yeah. And then at the hospital, I just didn't like the atmosphere of it. And then I went to the salon and I went to quite a prestigious hair salon and they said, would you like to start working on a Saturday job? And I thought, yeah, we'll do that. Earn a bit of money and whatever. And actually, I was never really into hair whatsoever. I wasn't really that way inclined. But do you know what? I really enjoyed it. And they offered me an apprenticeship. So I took the apprenticeship and I was it just happened. It just kind of happened. And so I did hairdressing for a few years. And then I wanted to do barbering. So I went to work for a barber shop for a few years and did men's hairdressing. And then I had an opportunity to go to Cyprus with the hairdressing. So I did that.
How did that come about then?
Well, through Weller, really. There was lots of things going on and I don't know, sort of like when I look back, I don't really know. I went on a sort of a funny journey. And because of going to Cyprus, I met some people from Harrogate. So I ended up living in Harrogate and working at a really lovely hair salon there. But then when I was doing that, I suddenly thought, do you know what? I wasn't earning enough money. And I thought because I was sort of relying on myself, I thought, right, we'll see what else I can do. And I was in hospital having my wisdom teeth taken out.
Oh, yeah.
Painful experience.
How many? Just one, though?
Well, no, I ended up having the two because one was painful. The other one wasn't. But they said, while you're here, you may as well have two done. I was like, oh, the pain was so terrible. And I remember feeling like a hamster, like this big, it was so painful. And while I was in there, somebody brought me in the Harrogate Advertiser and they were looking for staff. I thought, I can do that. So I came to the hospital and I applied for a job. And I remember walking into this room in Harrogate, at the Harrogate Advertiser, walking in. It's a similar room to this, actually. Lots of chairs around a big, massive table with lots of different people, which I was thinking, oh, embarrassing, and we all had to talk about ourselves and who we were and whatever.
Oh, so it's like a few people.
It was a few people. Yeah. It was like people who were being interviewed and whatever. And they said, we'll let you know at the end of the day whether you've got the job. And I got the job and I started.
You're good at getting these jobs then,
do you know what? I worked for the Harrogate Advertiser, and I remember sitting in this office thinking, what have I done wrong? I always get myself into pickles. I do. I honestly.
Yeah.
And I got into, and I thought, and I really missed the hairdressing because because I'm very creative. So I was missing my creative side. And all of a sudden I was having to sort of go on the phones and ring people and whatever. And then one day it just all clicked into place. And I thought, do you know what? I'm really loving it. I was earning 3 times the amount of money that I'd been on. So my money, my money went up quite a lot. And I thought, oh, I can live. And it was great. And then I became a rep for Harrogate and whatever. And then the rest was kind of history because I stayed in sales then for quite some time. But when I had an opportunity to work when it was CFM radio, I got an opportunity to work alongside some of the team that we used to sort of do stuff for children. We used to raise money, but in a very low key way. But I really enjoyed it. And it was part of our job description just to help out as and when we could. Yeah. Well, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I thought, do you know what? I'd like to work for the charity really. But the charity wasn't big enough then to be anything. So I just carried on with my sales and I carried on. And then one Christmas, I was actually on holiday. I was about to go on holiday and they brought me in and said, look, there's an opportunity for you to join the charity team. Would you be still interested? Because I had mentioned it in an appraisal. And I thought, yes, I'll do that. And I remember going on holiday for Christmas, having my Christmas break, coming back and literally sitting in a different chair to what I was in the same office, thinking, right.
I just moved from there to there.
And I just moved from there to there. And it was a real different job. And do you know what? I've never looked back, actually. I think I'm where I should be.
That's crazy, isn't it?
I think I should, yeah.
It's like what we were saying, isn't it? Everything always works out the best.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Yeah.
But what made you make the initial switch, do you reckon, in that hospital from the hairdressing? Why do you think you applied for that job?
Do you know what? I remember sitting in the bed, feeling absolutely dreadful with these
hamster cheeks. And as I say, somebody had given me this Harrogate Advertiser. And I remember flicking through it, not really interested in it, but I was sort of looking at. And then I went on to the jobs. I sort of went on to this jobs page and I thought, and I don't know. I really don't know what like sort of possessed me. It was like an impulse thing. And I don't know whether I thought I think what it was really was that I was loving doing what I was doing, but I felt that there was something more that I needed to do. There was something more and I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. And I thought, well, if it doesn't work out, I can go back to my hairdressing. And actually, funnily enough, after I'd been at my new job at the Advertiser in Harrogate, it wasn't very long, it was only about a couple of months. And my old boss had organised to meet me for a drink to ask me if I would go back because there was a lot of customers that had missed me and all of the people I worked with. And they were all going, oh, get her back. Because at that time, I was a little bit sort of thinking, have I done the right thing here? Because it was such a change. I was going to say, it's a big change.
So I'd gone from sort of saying, oh, hello, and being all sort of, and all of a sudden I was in sort of quite hard sales. And it was a bit of a shock to the system, I have to say. But after a while...
So when he organised that drink then, what were you kind of thinking? Were you thinking about going back or not?
Well, I think that was the moment, actually, that I thought no, because he basically asked me what I was earning at the time. And I told him, and he said, well, I'll match it for you to come back.
What, 3 times your salary?
He said, I'll match it.
He must have liked you then.
So I said, then there was something inside me going,
4 times.
Wow. Then I suddenly thought he might match it now, but would he carry on giving me would he keep on doing that? Or would I then become stagnated
at that
time? And By this time I got a company car. I was earning more money. I was flying really. And I did think for one moment I might, but there was something saying, no, don't.
Yeah.
There was something telling me. It was my gut. I think it was gut.
Yeah, you always need to go with your gut though, don't you?
It was my gut. Yeah, I think it was my gut. And I thought, no, I've got to stay on this path. Because if I go backwards, it's going to be very difficult to then go forwards again. Yeah. So I thought, no, carry on the path I'm on.
That's interesting though, isn't it? Like when you're saying earlier, you always felt like you could offer more or give more, and you're thinking of the progression in the future and that kind of thing. Because at the time, it could have been quite easy to go back to the job that you liked.
Very.
You're probably suited to on the same money and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen to your gut, isn't it? I think that's
it was definitely my gut at that time. And I remember saying, I felt so awful because he was so nice. He was such a nice boss. Yeah. And he was so lovely. And I remember ringing him a couple of days later and said, look, I've really, really, really thought about this. And as much as I would love to come back, because I do miss you all and I do miss my creative side, my creative side, I also feel that there's something that I need to stay for. And maybe it was because of today, of what I do now, because I probably wouldn't be doing the job that I'm doing now.
No, probably not. No. All about timing, isn't it? And everything like that.
Yeah.
So then how did things kind of progress from then when you obviously took the job in the charity? You moved chairs in the office.
I moved chairs. I literally moved from a chair to a chair. And I remember sort of literally being thrown into the deep end really with it, because obviously I thought I knew bits about it, but obviously I didn't know everything about it. So I was basically learning on the job. I was working with another girl and it was like, a bit of baptism of fire, thinking, but I truly knew that I was sitting in the right chair. I just knew it. And something came through that was, because it was just after Christmas. I started in January, and in January we do have like what we call falling off the sleigh presents, where children don't actually get any presents for Christmas. And sometimes we find out about those children after Christmas. And a call had come through to say that these two children hadn't had any presents for Christmas. And so that was my first ever sort of job as such, to make sure that these two little girls had presents. And I delivered them myself. And I can remember the dad crying, and he'd lost his job he'd been ill and he had no money, and the mum had no money. And it was a real sad situation. And I remember going in and these two little girls were crying and the mum and dad were crying. And I remember standing there thinking, oh my goodness, I got these prezzies for these two girls, and I got a mixture of dollies and prams and books and games and whatever. And I put them all on their table in this dining room area. And and from then on, I thought, do you know what? I'm doing something right. I'm doing something really right. And I know that everything I do is local. Nothing goes out of the area. And I was right there on the rock face, seeing what a difference it made to these children. And I said to the one little girl, how do you feel that you've now got some things? Because obviously they fell off the sleigh. And they said, well, all we're happy about is that Dad is alive.
Really?
Because they thought that Daddy was going to die because he was really poorly. And they said we were okay about it. And they were quite young. They would have been at primary school. So they weren't like teenagers.
That's mad,
they were
isn't
little.
It?
They were
so aware of.
There was a little girl and then a smaller girl, and this older girl said, we didn't mind not having anything for Christmas because we're just glad that Dad's with us. And it made me think, wow,
Yeah, some people are just grateful for simple things.
Yeah.
I feel like that's true though, isn't it? Like, you can be as wealthy or as rich as you want, but when you're ill, the only one thing you want is health, isn't it? You don't want these materialistic to the holidays, isn't it? And that's the only one thing you can ever want for your family.
And really, when it boils down to it, you just want your mum and your dad or your family or your grandparents or your sisters and brothers all around you. And above everything, it's love, isn't it? And I think children, I sort of beat on a bit about sort of love and hope and belief. And the reason for that is it's not being religious in any sense of the word, but I think if you're helping a child, you're also giving them some love. And if you're helping a child in some way, whatever it is, it's then belief that somebody's actually believing in them.
Yeah.
And then the hope is a different word altogether. And I think there is probably in the background, they're thinking, I hope somebody knows that I'm like this. I hope somebody knows I'm hungry. I hope somebody knows that, we haven't got a lot or whatever. And it might be something as very simple as food, toiletries, bed linen, a bed to sleep in. And I think when you're a child, you're in that position where you haven't really got a voice and you're going without these things. And sometimes you don't even know you're going without them.
Yeah.
Until you start having them. And they think, oh, yeah. So I use those words a lot because I think that's what I want to give back to these children. And I see, because I've got 3 children, and when I go and see these children, I see their faces, my children's faces in their faces. So it becomes very, very personal.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think them 3 words are so important, aren't they? Like hope is, I don't know, it's powerful, isn't it? Because you're hoping in all aspects of life. If it's, I don't know, this is a terrible example, but say the football team I support, Everton, I hope they win every game, but they lose every game and stuff like that. And and it's just like, if those kids can like believe that somebody actually cares about them and that kind of thing, it's powerful because that's all kids or people just want, isn't it? People to believe in them, whatever it is.
Because I think there's so many children who are forgotten, or they slip through the net, or somebody hasn't believed what they've said, or they haven't explained themselves, and then, now I can go into schools, which I often do, and I can say to the pastoral people, now, do you have any children that you think are in that position? And people go, well, how do you know they're disadvantaged? How do you know? And generally we know because they're on a pupil premium, or, they're having free school meals or free uniforms, or they're getting a help going on a trip or whatever. So those children can be identified quite easily. Yeah. But there's also the children who are they're not exactly disadvantaged, but they're not advantaged either. So they're literally, their mums and dads are working flat out.
2 jobs.
If they've got 2 jobs or 3 jobs or 4 jobs, depending on what their situation is. Really struggling. So those children are disadvantaged because they might be eating and they might have toiletries, but they don't go to the cinema. They don't go to the pictures. They don't do anything else. So in some ways they are disadvantaged because they're not doing
like sports, or
they're not doing sports,
hobbies,
because
activities.
Because the families are literally on a kind of a breadline.
Yeah.
So those are the children as well, sort of sometimes may slip through the net. And those are the children that I want to make sure that we don't forget those children. And I think pastoral at schools now are definitely more knowledgeable about that now. I work with a lot in and around Cumbria, and they're just amazing. Sometimes, there was I always remember one pastoral that I met quite a few years ago. And I just wanted to wrap her up in a ribbon and take her home. She was so gorgeous. And I thought, if only she was in every single school, because she was just amazing. I wanted to take her and I wanted to pinch her. She's retired now, sadly, but she always inspired me because I thought, she totally got it. And when I deal with corporates, which I deal with corporates, I deal with general, all sorts of public people, but also general people, if people want to go climb a mountain for me or go and run for me or do whatever they want to do for me. And then you've got, the corporates who will say, is this really happening? And you go, yeah, it's really happening. And they go, can't get my head around it. And I said, well, it's 1 in 4. And I was at Carlisle Ambassadors a few weeks ago and I did a talk. I was very fortunate to do a talk. Yeah. And I always feel very fortunate because I don't feel it's not about me. It's about me being able to get that message out there. And I brought 4 people up to the front and I gave 3 of them chocolate and 1 of them not. And it's visual stuff like that.
Powerful, yeah.
Very
Even
powerful.
me just picturing that in my head and think, Oh, yeah.
So if I give you a bar of chocolate and your friend a bar of chocolate and your other friend a bar of chocolate, but your other friend, I don't give anything to. How?
To be fair, if it was my friends, I think it's banter. But if it's a real life situation, I think, oh,
Yeah.
But yes, just like that's good though, isn't it? Like I wouldn't think of doing something like that, but if they can see that on the stage and you think,
It did actually.
Hit home.
I think it did hit home because I thought, what can I do to make it visually? Because it's all very well me saying 1 in 4 and you think, oh yeah, 1 in 4. And whether you've got, some people don't have imagination, some people don't see things in a creative way. They might see things in a visual way, but not, if you just say to somebody, this is what it is, it may just go over their head and not think about it. But when I had the 4 people up and, I literally gave each one a chocolate apart from the last one. And I said, well, how do you feel about my last guest not getting a thing? It made them think, oh my goodness, is that true? And you go, well, that's my life every day. Yeah. 1 in 4, 1 in 4, 1 in 4.
1 in 4,
1 in 4. And that's all I think. I think I need to look after that one. And that's my drumming. Yeah. I drum every day.
But it's crazy, isn't it, when you think like 25% of kids are like deprived.
Yeah.
And like some people just wouldn't even think of it. Like you say, I think when you said just previously about the people that aren't really super, super deprived, the ones that are just on the line as well, that they'll go forgotten.
Yeah.
And it's how to make sure they feel included and exposed to all the experiences.
And this is why we do things like Sports Challenge, where we've got a Sports Challenge coming up very shortly. And it's where sports groups can help children like that who are in a situation where their families can't afford to send them to hockey, athletics, football, whatever it is. And they could maybe go to that sports group and say, look, I can't afford to bring, do you have anything? Do you have anything within your group that could help us? And they could say, yes, we can help you because we're involved with Cash for Kids.
Yeah.
So how fantastic is that?
Amazing, yeah.
I remember many, many, many moons ago, my little boy coming home saying that this boy wanted to play football, but he couldn't play football because A, he didn't have any boots, and B, he didn't have any clothes. I can remember speaking to the head teacher saying, look, I know that you've got football boots and strips in the shed. And she was absolutely fuming, I think, with me saying that. But I thought, no, I will still bang on that drum for that little boy because that's my life. That's my life and that's my passion. And guess what? He did have some football boots. And yes, he did end up getting a kit, a football kit. And he carried on playing football all through the rest of his school life. Now, whether he plays football today, because he'll be about 19, 20 now, I just thought, like those types of people stay in my head.
Yeah.
Because I think, well, he had that opportunity to, and it ended up that the mummy was able to go to the food bank. There was a few doors we were able to open for that family. And how fantastic is that?
Yeah, it's amazing.
And you had a little boy who was happy because all he wanted to do was play football.
Yeah.
But you can't just play football, can you? You can't just play football. You're a football person and, you can't go and play a game of football unless you've got boots and you've got your kit or you've got a tracksuit or you've got whatever it is. But if you haven't got it, if your family can't afford it.
That's what I mean. Like, say for me, if I wasn't able to play football when I was younger, I would have felt like left out and deprived of it and stuff like that. And you just think that if kids aren't able to do that, and to be honest, most kids want to be a footballer, don't they, when they're younger, or like a YouTuber now, but mainly a footballer.
Yeah.
And like if you're the one person that
doesn't, and you might be that boy that says, oh, I don't like football. When actually they do. But they're saying they don't like football because they're trying to protect their family. They're trying to protect themselves. And it goes back to sort of like even a haircut. Very often you might see a boy with really long hair. Does he really want long hair? And it might be that he can't go to the hairdressers. Because if you think about how often do you go to a hairdresser's?
Every weekend.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're extreme because you go every week. But, if you weren't extreme, you'd probably go every few weeks. And how would you feel if you couldn't go to the barbers?
Like, to be honest, with me, if I don't go every week, mainly for my beard and stuff like under here, I'm quite hairy, especially when I get older. I don't feel confident. And like, say when I do Zoom calls or podcasts, I feel like, I don't really feel good in myself and stuff. So it's like one of them things, isn't it? When you're not feeling fresh.
Because people say to me, well, Mission Christmas, I'll say, well, what can I get? What can I, and I'll say, well, we do have a real big thing about teenage boys where we don't get enough. We do get enough in the end because we keep on to obviously get people to donate, which is fantastic. And very often they'll say, well, what? Because I think they're thinking a teenage boy, they're thinking gadgets, they're thinking, but actually it's not. It could be a football top, it could be a t-shirt, it could be a hair salon, it could be a barber's, voucher, it could be a cinema ticket, it could be a pair of socks, it could be a box of sweets, it could be a game. And I have to get people to basics because it might just be deodorant.
Yeah.
Because
aftershave.
Because how many children have you been around where maybe, they're not smelling overly great, but that's not their fault, is it? Because they may, when they're at home, they perhaps haven't got the toiletries. So those are the children that I wake up for every day. So that's why I feel that my life has come a full circle, because I'm helping those children that I kind of sort of witnessed myself when I was sort of 10 or 11, 12, because I was put accidentally perhaps into that world. So I saw things in a different way.
Yeah.
And I don't want any child to feel like that. No. I want every child to have a bit of fun or a bit of respite or, just deodorant or a pair of socks or even just a pair of pajamas. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
that's cool. Because how would you say your job's developed then over the years? I imagine it's been slightly different since you first started. How has it evolved?
Yeah, I think it's evolved really. I think when I first started, I suppose I knew about the charity. I obviously knew about the charity, but I didn't really sort of know it inside and out. Whereas now I feel I do know it inside and out. And I also think that more children, more families are putting their hands up now to when I first started doing the charity. You didn't really get the amount of phone calls that I do now from mummies or daddies or grannies or grandparents or friends or certain people or ring you and say, look, we've got this situation, because every child has to be verified. You can't look, you know what I mean? Like they could be telling you anything, couldn't they? So every child has to be verified through, a pastor or a school or a vicar or somebody who looks after them in social services or the probation officer or whoever's looking after that child. We have to make sure that it's right. Because if you're raising money, if you're running up a mountain for me, you want to know that every single penny of yours is going into the right place. So,
do you find many people like trying it on or not really?
Well, I think you're always going to get a bad apple wherever you go. And there's always going to be some people who think that they can apply and that we're just going to help them. But we can't do that because it has to be done correctly.
Yeah.
So the T's and C's have to be done correctly because it has to, when you're a charity, it's, transparency is everything. Everything. Because I want to look somebody in the eye and say, do you know what? I don't know. I've just had somebody who swam for me and she's raised £1,007 recently. And I don't think she'd be happy if I said that her money was going to the wrong people. It just wouldn't. It
wouldn't sit right, would it?
Yeah, it doesn't sit right and it's not transparent. It has to be transparent. But I do think there's more people who are, I don't so happier to say that they're in a mess or they're in a situation. But I think the schools talk about it more now and the pastorals are a bit more aware. Whereas I didn't think I looked after many pastorals in the past. Whereas I do now. I've got to know them all and I do get to know them. So it's really lovely.
I think that must be a good sign for you that showing that the awareness is out there and stuff. Because I'd imagine, this is just my opinion, in the past maybe some people might be too proud to put their hands up or put their hand out and say, I do this.
And we still get that. You'll still get families who will be put forward for something, but they say no, thank you.
Really?
They will say no, thank you, even though they know their children they're not benefiting from it, which is also kind of sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
But obviously they're proud or they just feel that they can't ask or whatever. It's really, really, it's a real upsetting situation, I think, for so many situations, some people will gladly take it. Some people reluctantly take it. And some people just, no, thank you. And also, I think as well with Cash for Kids, a lot of people sort of think we're just a Christmas charity. They don't realise we carry on all year round. And I go, no, I'm not just for Christmas. And people do, people get surprised by that because obviously after Christmas, we go into things like we do Cash for Kids days. We do obviously our sports challenge. People do sort of stuff for us throughout the year, and then obviously we lead into Christmas. But at Christmas time, I think it's more known because we get sponsors who will pay for advertising or whatever, and they'll push it. And obviously it's out in all the supermarkets and everything. So I think people are perhaps more aware at Christmas time.
Yeah, I was going to say, why do you think people have that perception then it's just around for Christmas?
I think it's maybe they hear it more on the radio, or they hear it more in the newspapers or in media generally, social media, and people, people come together. And I don't think anybody can stand to think of children go without presents on Christmas morning.
Yeah.
So I think maybe up to the ante towards the end of the year, whereas I think the rest of the year, certain people will know what they're doing for the charity, but you haven't got a majority. Whereas leading sort of into November, December, it is the majority of Cumbria and South West Scotland that actually are on board with it.
That makes sense, doesn't it?
So there's more people.
More support kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a bigger piece of the cake, isn't it? I suppose if you imagine a piece of cake and taking a slice out, that's what probably happens throughout the year. But I think when we get to Christmas, most of the cake is being eaten, isn't it? Because everybody knows.
Visualising things, you're good at that.
Yeah. I think it's trying to sort of get that picture across, isn't it?
And making it relatable as well, I think.
Yeah.
Because that makes a lot of sense. So they're like around the year, then what are some kind of like key events that you like to do, or is there any memorable experiences like recently, like you said about the swimming one that girl did? Yeah,
well, she was amazing. Amazing.
What did she do specifically?
She did. She swam across, I think it was across Ullswater, and she was amazing. She was amazing because she does a bit of wild swimming anyway. And she just decided to do this swim, and it just so happened that I'd been at a networking event in Silloth, and we were chatting on. I do know her because she'd also done something for me a few years ago with the Rotary in Silloth on they cycled. And so I got to know her, and I got to know her really well. And anyway, she happened to be on this networking night. And she said, I'm doing this swim in a couple of weeks. I said, all right. I thought, wow, we just chatting. She said, you know what? I haven't done it for charity. I'm going to do it for yours. I went, so I said, that's great. Thank you. And so we put it out there. She put it out there, and she got 30 quid and 50 quid and 100 quid. And then it was all mountain. And then she ended up on £1,007 raising, which is amazing. And so she did that. But there's throughout the year, there are certain times when, we have the Cash for Kids Day around about May, June. And that, every single penny of that goes into the pot for essentials like toiletries, clothes, food, heating and things like that, which we call cost of living grants. And that, I feel really proud of that because, I might have a situation where I can help a couple of children or 5 children or 100 children, very, very locally with £50 grants, which is amazing. Sure. So you can have like a pot of, I think around about 30k has gone out so far this year. So that's fun. So
it's amazing. Yeah.
£50 of a lot of people. So that really stands out for me. And then I think the other one obviously is the sports challenge because it's a complete win-win. Andy Crossman from ABC Boxing, bless him. He doesn't mind me talking about him.
Yeah.
So
that's all right.
We're all right. We're all right. He said to me a few years ago that if he hadn't have done the sports challenge the first time round, there wouldn't be a boxing club in Wigton.
Really?
So that's how powerful.
I was going to say, yeah.
Be. So he raised money because what you do, you raise your money and the money comes back to you. It's like a boomerang.
Okay.
It's just fantastic. And he's been doing it now every single year. And I said to him, I spoke to him last week and I said, Andy, are you going to do the sports challenge this year? And he went, I'd be stupid not to. So he absolutely was the very words he said. Because a couple of years ago, they bought a van so that there was rural isolated children. So if you were living in, I don't know, Kirkbride or nowhere, but you were a boy that wanted to go boxing, you could go because they can pick you up or drop you back off because they've got, and that boxing club is now thriving. And so, it's so
cool. Yeah.
It's fantastic. So that sort of sticks out. But obviously, I suppose my main one is Christmas because it's so full on. It's so full on. And the Leviathan motorbike group always have a bike ride for us through the town centre.
Yeah.
And that's my goosebump moment, because I look at all these fantastic bikers who are through absolutely out of the goodness of their heart all raise in just a few hours. They raise at least £1,000 at least. I think last year it was about 900, I think, but it gives you an idea. Just a few hours. They meet up at 11 and it's all over by sort of 3:00 in the afternoon. And they go through the city and they all dress up. And, you've got all these bikers who are leather clad, who have suddenly become Father Christmases and Christmas puddings and whatever. And they are hilarious and they are just amazing. And they come out every single year. And that's the start of Mission Christmas. And the people I work with through that, because I have volunteers, I have about 80 volunteers who what I call my elves. Because I'm chief elf. Did you know that?
Oh, you're chief elf.
I'm chief elf. So when
That's the official job title.
When I introduce myself as Sara Oldham, I'm not always Sara Oldham. I'm chief elf. So I'm chief elf, as from sort of like.
You didn't introduce yourself that at the start of the podcast, did you?
I should have done. Because a lot of people only know me as chief elf.
You hide all over about it.
I do.
So then how can people get involved if they want to, not for, say, the Cash for Kids Day or the Sports Day or Christmas? How can people raise money and that kind of thing?
Well, initially call me, because everything is relative. Some people love to bake a cake. Some people like to climb a mountain. Some people like to swim. Some people might say, do you know what? I'll get our football club to raise a bit of money. Or I like to actually speak to the person first, because I don't want them to think, oh my goodness, she's going to ask me to do something I don't really want to do. I always try and find out what they like to do, or if they got good friends and family who would support them. I would just find out what their interests are. And it might be that they like playing golf, or they like, sailing, or it might be that they don't actually like doing much, to be honest, but how can I help? So it might be that they could go to work and, and sort of say to everybody at work, right, should we all raise some money by, so like a Cash for Kids Day? It could be a non-uniform day, or it could be, something that it doesn't have to be hard. It can be really simple. And the more simpler ideas that you have are actually the better ones. It might be that you just want to do say, right, a £5 each instead of doing like a Santa present that you do, or
Secret
Santa.
Yeah.
Instead of doing that, you could say, well, look, I'll tell you what, we won't do Secret Santa this year. We'll all give a £5 to Cash for Kids. I think it's really important that we get the presents, but it's really important that we get the money as well.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because we've still got grants to go out.
Yeah.
So, it's trying to get that happy medium, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suppose that's true, isn't it?
Yeah. But so some things that will just come to somebody, with Nicola, she won't mind mentioning her, but Nicola, who did the swim, we were just walking along and she went, you know what? I'm doing a really big thing here. I should do it for charity, shouldn't I?
Yeah, and she raises over £1,000.
Which she
Brilliant,
perhaps wouldn't have done otherwise.
Yeah.
So it's just the simple ideas that come to fore. And it like, there was one chap, he rang me and he said, oh, I've got a load of clothes that I don't want anymore. He said, stacks and stacks. I said, all right. He said, what can I do with them? And I said, well, you can give them to the charity shop, or you could do a Cash for Clothes or whatever. And he ended up doing Cash for Clothes and gave me the money. So he did help the charity in his own way. So everybody comes up with lots and lots of, it could be just something simple like pound on the bill.
Yeah.
So, say in a restaurant, you could say, right, some of the ice creams of a Cash for Kids ice creams, or because I don't want to make it hard for people. I want to make it easy and fun.
Yeah.
Because the message of Cash for Kids is quite serious and quite sad. So I don't want anybody feeling like that. I want people to raise money, having fun.
Yeah. Because some people can overcomplicate things, can't they? Think,
Well,
but yeah, I have to
and you think,
climb Kilimanjaro or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't want anybody in that position. I don't want anybody thinking, oh God, I've got to go and climb Mount Everest to, it's not about that, is it? It just might be just getting a few pals, a few friends round, even if it was like a dinner party at home. And you said, right, I'm going to do a dinner party. Can I all have £1 off you each?
Yeah.
Or it doesn't have to be hard. It can be really simple ideas. But remember, at the back of it, the difference you're making is really, truly amazing.
I think it's like what you're saying about the thing that's sticking in my head is the chocolate bar thing with the 4 people, and obviously the one person doesn't get one, and the £50 grants as well. Like £50 that helps a family it goes a long way, doesn't it?
Yes.
Realistically, it's not too hard to raise £50. I think.
No.
If you've got a decent support network around you.
I think if you've got a good network and some good pals, or something that you do on a weekend, either football or you're doing something that
even drinking alcohol. I don't drink.
Well, no.
Like I gave up like 3 years ago, but say like you'll spend £10 on a cocktail
easily, yeah.
Save the hangover.
Yeah. So when you're drinking your cocktail, just have one less. But it could be something as simple as you might have a cup of coffee every day, and you might think, right, on a Friday, I'm not going to have a cup of coffee for a whole year. And you give me your cup of coffee money, your cup of coffee day. You could have a little money box and just stick the money that you'd spend on a coffee.
It's easy, isn't it? If say, I don't know, I don't drink tea or coffee either, but if you spend like £5 on a coffee, 52 weeks in a year, what's that, 260 quid or something?
Exactly.
And so quite quickly.
It does. And that's how simple things can be. And people get into a habit.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Habit. Yeah. Habits are powerful and dangerous at the same time.
Yeah, they are. And I think once you get into it, I think I read somewhere that it takes you 3 weeks to get out of a habit. And, it's like drinking Lucozade or having a drink. And you think, do you know what? I don't want to drink anymore. I actually don't want to drink, or I don't want to smoke. And it could be something that somebody might want to give something up, and they might think, well, how can I make a difference at the end of it? Like I've got a chap that runs for me. He's fantastic. He doesn't run for me all the time, but he does the Great North Run, because I get places for Great North Run each year. And I've got 18 runners this year, which is fantastic. And one of the chaps that runs for me, he just drank a lot, and he gave up drinking. And what he did was, instead of drinking, he started running. And with the running, he now runs half marathons, and he does lots of things for charity. He's an amazing man, and he's so lovely, and he helps lots of different types of charity, but he helps me, if not every year, every other year, or whatever it is. And he says, I don't drink anymore, but I do something back to make a difference.
Yeah, that's so powerful though, isn't it? I think, like say it'll be 3 years for me at the end of August.
Wow, well done.
I just did it to progress my business and stuff. But it's, a lot of people do say to me, oh, how do you stop drinking? Or how can I stop drinking and stuff? And my personal reasons is I want to progress my business and my career.
Yeah.
So I've got like that end goal in mind, thinking I don't want to get to say 30 and think, oh, it hasn't worked out, and live with regret and that kind of thing, because I want to try and achieve my goals that I set for myself. But I feel like drinking, there's time and place, everything in moderation. There's nothing wrong with it. Like if you want to do it, enjoy it. If you take it too far, then whatever. But like if you want to stop drinking, just stop drinking. You kind of need to replace it with something, don't you?
I think so. Yeah.
Like say he does the running. Say with me, I've got business because that's my focus, that's my drive. Yeah. But if you stop and don't replace it with anything, then you're probably not going to last, are you? No. But that's just my opinion anyway.
And I think if you do want to give up something and you've got something to replace it with, that's something very exciting or something you've never done before, then actually you probably get out of that habit quite quickly. Like you knew what you wanted, and you knew where you wanted to go with your podcasts and your world of work. And as you say, you don't want to be looking back when you're sort of 30 and 40 or 50 thinking, do you know what? I shouldn't have done that. But you've identified that quite quickly, And this is where it's funny, because I speak to lots of different people. And I remember once saying to this chap, I said, why do you give me all this stuff every year? I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated by you, really.
Mm.
And he said, because I was that child.
Yeah.
I was that child. And he's such a lovely man. And he's got a really successful business, really successful, lovely children, lovely family. And he said, I never, ever, ever want my children to be in that position that I was in. And he said, and if I can give something back, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I have 2 businessmen. One's got 5 children and one's got a couple of children. And every year he gives, because it works out at £65 per child at Christmas time. So I get £130 from one businessman for his 2 children.
Yeah.
And I get the other one, I get the 5 lots of 65s from this other businessman. Because he says, how lucky am I, or how lucky they are to be a dad and know that their children are actually okay. So they give something back from kind of each of their child. So everyone has their own reasons and their own thoughts about, and this is why I think if somebody wants to do something, it's quite nice to talk to them first and just try and get an idea of what's in the back of their heads, because
why
and how they, what they want to do, whatever. So
interesting. Yeah.
No, it's good. It's good.
Yeah, definitely. So then, prepped you with these couple of questions, haven't I, to close off? So, biggest mistakes or biggest regrets? Have you got any?
No.
It's like I was saying earlier, wasn't it?
No. I've got no regret, because I think opportunities come your way. Sometimes they're not great, but you've learned from it and you move on. And when somebody said to me, when there was a particular situation going on, and she was lovely, this lady, and she looked at me and she said, it will pass. It will pass. And do you know what? I think it does, because we're like running water, aren't we? We we evolve. And I think you can't regret or
in the past or anything.
Live in the past. You've got to move forward, and hopefully you get to where you should be.
Yeah, where you should be. Yeah, I think that's the key thing. And then I think your greatest strength is your greatest weakness.
Okay. Well,
I think about these ones.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I think my greatest strength is that I am a weeble. If you knock me down, I will get back up again. And that's a strength, I think. And I'm very positive, and I'm very resilient, and I'm very determined. People might see me as, oh, lovely Sara, or, oh, she's so lovely. But yes, I am a lovely person, but I've got a bit of an inner strength of trying to make things happen, not just for me, but also for others. I'm very passionate about my friends and my family, and, I want the best for them, and I hopefully show the positives of what could happen. Yes, sometimes we all go off on a wrong path, but it's getting back on the right path. And I suppose my weakness is caring too much sometimes. When maybe I shouldn't have cared that much about it. Because, it's like when they say, don't they, when you stand on the top of a mountain, not that I stand on many mountains, but if I did, you look down and you realize what is real and what's not. And I suppose I do, sometimes I'll care about something that I think, well, there's nothing I can do about it, or worry about something. You sort of, you have that secret worry.
Yeah.
And so that's maybe one of my weaknesses, and I will...
So it's like me a weakness and a strength, though, can't it? Yeah. Show that you do care, what I mean? And that's can be a good trait and a bad trait, like you say.
It's a bit of both, isn't it?
It depends what day it is or what situation it is.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting. Said, right, where can people find you? Where can people get involved? Websites, social medias, all that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm on social media, and my name's Sara Oldham, if you want to add as a friend. If you want to call me, I have a mobile number which people can call me, which they can get a message through to me on my social media. There's also the Cash for Kids social media.
Yeah.
And there's also a website which is there, but, I think you could soon find me quite quickly on social media. I'm on social media quite a lot, which I probably drive people mad. But again, it's because I care. I do care, and I want to make people realise what they're doing, how amazing they are, because I thank everybody. I'm a bit anal about thanking people, because I think if you thank people, thank you is such two very, very small words, but you should say thank you.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks very much. I've really enjoyed that. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure to subscribe, like the video, comment for your part. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple, make sure to follow the podcast and leave a 5-star review, and we'll see you next time. Bye, 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 bye.